Please welcome back Donald Lilly.
Welcome back to day 2. If you don't know about that, Atomic Dog, that's the theme song for Make It Sound Fire Fraternity Incorporated, which I'm a proud man and member of. And if you're not sure, that's the first Black Greek letter fraternity founded at a historically Black college or university. And it ties in because DI does an annual scholarship to HBCU students in the hospitality program. So shout out to DI for that, and we're gonna move right in as I catch my breath. The next session, we're gonna kick off day 2. This is called Mastering Cybersecurity, Conquering Global Threats and Provider Complexities, and Real World Solutions. Let's please give a round of applause for John Hansman, President and CEO of Truett.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Hey, well, good morning. Sometimes it's hard to tell what time it is. I don't know if I can even remotely compete with those dance moves. So I'm going to tell a story this morning just to get you started, to get to know me a little bit. Normally, I have a beard, as you can see in this picture. I also normally wear a fedora, which is sitting in the back because I didn't want to get my head all sweaty. This morning, I was shaving. And as you notice, I'm clean-faced. It wasn't on purpose. This morning, I was shaving, and then all of a sudden I noticed that my mustache didn't look right. I had taken the plastic piece off and went zip, and looked at it, and I called my wife, and I said, hey, if I accidentally cut off my mustache, do I have to shave my whole beard? And she said, yes, honey, you do. And so here I am looking like I'm 10 years younger. I don't see the clicker up here. Is it somewhere nearby? Am I missing it? Is it on the other side? Oh, there it is. Okay, fantastic. Sorry about that. Okay, well, good morning again. My name is John Hansman. I am with Truett, a managed cybersecurity and IT company here. We have 2 offices, one here in the Spokane area, and we have another one that is over in Western Washington, down in the capital of Olympia. And we focus specifically on serving small, medium-sized businesses and help them with cybersecurity and basic IT needs. So that's just my background about who I am. I spent 20 years in the home security industry before I started my own company. And we now just have a small crew of guys who take care of our clients. And I'm excited for where our company is because we're literally on the cusp of seeing how we can protect clients. So one example, and this is what we'll talk about later on, is when you have the right tools in place, the risk level of your companies and your company itself dramatically decreases. Here's what I mean by that. I had 2 interactions with clients this week. One of them did not have anything in place. He had basic email, wasn't monitoring it, wasn't doing any training, and he had a business email compromise. And he is in the security industry, in my old industry, and he, as far as he can tell, lost customer passwords and a whole bunch of other things. And we don't know yet what the damage is because the assessment is still happening right now. We also have another client of ours who is, they're using the right tools, they're doing the right things. They also had a business email compromise, but the right tools that are in place kicked out the intruders from Russia within 6 minutes of the time that they got kicked in, before the time that they had their attack. There's a stark difference in doing cybersecurity and not in today's world, and that is what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the key difference in cyber attacks. We're going to just cover a couple of the main ones. We're actually going to talk about some case studies. Most likely you'll know most of the businesses that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the lessons learned in those case studies. And how do you set your business up with the right vendors? I think that's really important. How do you build the right partnerships with the right people? Because there's different methods depending on the size of business that you have. And we're going to look at two different styles of IT. So for those of you who have really big companies, you might be looking at maybe a co-managed solution, or you may be looking at something like what we do where you partner with a company like ours. So those are the things that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to kick it off, and we're going to talk about how things have changed. How many people are who are in the IT section of your business? Can I get a show of hands out there? So great. We have at least 25 to 30% of you are doing AI, you're doing IT day to day. So if that's the case, how many people have seen a cyber attack either in your business or in someone you know? This can be for everybody in the last year. Okay, we probably have 50% of the room has heard of or seen a cyber attack. Most people probably received one of those things in the mail from like AT&T that says your information's been compromised. All of us are affected by this. And we can see this in some FBI statistics. I was lucky to be in a meeting about a month and a half ago where they had one of the lead agents for the cybersecurity division of the FBI. And he came in and gave us some just crazy statistics. So here's number one. Last year in 2023, they had over 300,000 phishing complaints, costing businesses $19 million. Now, here's the thing to understand about the FBI. This is only what's reported. Not everyone reports. In fact, probably a good chunk of people do not report cybersecurity attacks to the FBI through their IC3 platform. If that happens to you, we'd recommend that you do it. For one, you'll get help from the FBI. The other part of it is it helps us really see what's really going on. But even then, 19 million is still a lot of money. 300,000 ransomware complaints in 2023, costing 60 million. Still a lot of money. Here's the one that blew my mind. So look at the difference. You see 300,000 phishing, which can also go, ransomware can happen within that. 3,000 ransomware complaints and 60 million. Only 21,000, just over 21,000 business email compromise. But guys, look at that number. 3.96 billion with a B dollars that it costs businesses. That's a huge number, and they're expecting that to be in the 4.5 or more this coming year. We're seeing this have real life consequences, and the question is, what are we doing about it to make sure that it doesn't happen to our businesses? Because in the end of the day, it can literally destroy businesses and wipe them out, and we don't want that. So here's some recent just things that we've seen. Who heard of MGM, right? They were down for, I think it was 10 to 11 days, costing them, I think it was $2 million or more a day, every day that they were down. So now they're saying it cost them $110 million in lost revenue and the work they had to do to get back up. We saw real world consequences with lines literally in the hotels, the stories of people standing in line in the lobby full of angry people who can't get to their room, people who had already checked in but they couldn't get their stuff out of their room, like crazy stuff that are happening. Recently, last month, who's been through SeaTac recently? You might have had to fly through there to get through here. If you notice in some areas of the airport, I fly out of there frequently, there are random screens that are down. They had a cyber attack about a month ago, and there still doesn't seem like they're fully recovered in all areas. And then we've had AT&T had a big data breach. I'm sure some of you got the thing in the mail telling you that your email, or not your email, but your data was compromised. So we're going to talk about just some basic types of cybersecurity attacks that we're seeing today. Now, we're going to talk about phishing to start out with. Phishing is a broad attack. Now, we're going to talk about spear phishing in a second, but phishing is a broad attack. Most likely, they don't know who you are if you're getting phishing emails. I would say every company in here gets phishing emails. Every company sees them. You may not notice them if you have good spam protection, but almost every company who's been around for a while, is getting phishing emails to their main platform. They're usually broad. They use minimal personalization. When we do phishing tests for our clients, we use really broad-looking phishing emails to test people to make it easy for us, so that we can have something that's just duplicatable and that's usable. They use tactics like urgency, the prompt quick action. They do things like just making you feel like you have to do this immediately. Sometimes they do things like, send fake invoices, or who probably most people have seen the fake DocuSign that goes around. Things that create urgency and emotion for you to go, oh, I need to do something with this. And with phishing, it's most of the time it's broad. Spear phishing is a little different. Generally with spear phishing, it's a targeted attack. They focus on specific individuals in the organization, usually people in HR, people in payroll, people who are like CEOs or high-level people, and they do their research before they actually do the attack. So when they send a spear phishing email, it has a lot higher chance of looking real, which means they may not be sending out as many emails, but their chances are higher because they've done their research. They know how to trick people. They actually really have looked into your business, and they know who the CEO is, who the secretary is. There's some things you can do on your website, like remove certain things to kind of bring that down to a minimum. But a lot of times people have looked at your business ahead of time if you have a spear phishing attack. Sony is a really good example from, if you remember back a long time ago, it was a spear phishing attack from North Korea. They released some movies early onto the internet that would have made a lot of money for them. That was a spear phishing attack to the CEO, who then they had a vulnerability that let them in. That's a good example. High personalization again, and they use actions like fund transfers. They will sometimes be able to spoof emails or create an email that looks very close to yours. Maybe it's one letter off of your domain, but it has the same email format with the name. And they'll send, hey, can you send me over a wire transfer, or send over a check, or go get gift cards and give me the numbers. Those types of things are really common scams within spear phishing. The big key difference is that a phishing attack is generic and spear phishing is targeted and personalized. So most of us are getting phishing, like generic phishing. They're like email marketing campaigns, but bad ones. And spear phishing is targeted. It's specifically at your company. So I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but here's just some examples of some state-sponsored cyber attacks that we saw. Iranian attackers recently targeted Trump campaign, and it was also a Harris Biden campaign. There's a lot of interference going on, and the best way for them to do that is obviously cybersecurity, because they can do it from anywhere at the espionage level. July 2024. So state-sponsored attacks, if you're in an area where maybe you're in a popular destination, it's something to pay attention to. But it's something that we're not going to talk a lot about, because the way in which they do their state-sponsored attacks is really the same way that regular criminals who are looking for money, they do the same thing. They're doing phishing attacks, they're doing business email compromises. All those things are the same. The only thing that's different is some people are in it for the money, some people are in it for political reasons. That's just the big difference there. Well, so here's some more. Just Chinese hackers used infected USB drives. This is fascinating. I've read this article a couple of years ago just about USB drives being left at conventions like this one when other people of political stature were at these buildings, and they actually plugged them into their computers and got infected. FBI. So there's a bunch of stuff going on, not just money. There's a lot of espionage happening as well. Okay, so we're going to talk about our first case study. We're going to talk about Google back in 2015, and actually Facebook as well. So this is where we're going to talk about how the real world consequences or some real world things that happened, how did they happen, and what do we learn from the incidents from other people. So Google and Facebook, between 2013 and 2015, this guy, who I can't pronounce his name, this group, a Lithuanian attacker, carried out a sophisticated phishing scheme, and they targeted Google and Facebook, resulting in $100 million of lost income. So how did it happen? So they impersonated one of their vendors, and they used fake emails and forged invoices. And I will tell you, amongst small business, medium-sized business, forged invoices is probably one of the top things that I see in phishing attacks and cybersecurity attacks, because that's where the money is. That's where people are getting payouts. If they can trick your department into sending out money to a foreign bank, it's super easy if they can get that convincing done. And that's what happened here. And it happened over a long period of time. They had convincing communication. So they used detailed business knowledge to craft believable emails. So this is that spear phishing we were talking about. This is where this organization did a bunch of work to look and figure out, probably from LinkedIn and other places, who does what at Facebook. And they created believable emails from a vendor that Facebook was using and had them send those invoice payments off to the wrong bank. Problem with that is once the money's gone, it's gone. So they lost $100 million of that. And I believe when I look at some of my notes, I believe it started out with 200 and they were able to get half of it back through working through their banks. But over 2 years of time, these guys at Facebook sent payments to this Lithuania guy thinking they were going to the right place. They thought it was a legitimate vendor. They were really talking to the finance department is the one who did all that work. And what's crazy is they just mimicked a vendor of yours. This is why it's really important if you are running a company, outbound payments, talk to your people, do cybersecurity training to make sure that they have a good relationship even with your vendors. And when something doesn't look right or it looks even a tiny bit off, they double check and they make a phone call. If these guys had made a phone call, it would have been a whole different story for them. So what's the impact? So we look at the impact of Facebook. They lost 100 million. So it was obviously what I said. I said it wrong. I said 200. They lost 100 million initially, but legal efforts recovered about 49 million of it. Still, 49 million is a lot of money to lose when it comes down to just budgeting. Now, it may not seem much because those two companies are huge, but if we lost 49 million, a lot of us would be out of business. So, reputational damage. This is, we're still using Facebook and Google, obviously. But when these things happen to businesses, we do take a second look, especially when it involves our data. And one of the things that we're learning, and this is what we're talking about, we need to make sure that we have verification in place. So we should be making strict procedures within our different departments to make sure that we're verifying the vendors. When we see an invoice that maybe looks a little different, that we are actually doing something to verify. Generally, that means a phone call. That doesn't mean replying to the email and saying, hey, is this for real? You laugh, but I've seen it. And of course, what's the hacker going to say? They're going to say, yeah, it's for real. We're going to make sure that we're doing regular phishing, cyber awareness training. Cyber awareness, as you'll see in some other case studies, is not just computer security. Cyber awareness now, 98% of it involves training your employees to look out for things that are in email, that are in even phone calls. There's now deep fakes. There's AIs adding a whole different dimension to this ball game. But we should be doing regular awareness training. If you're not doing awareness training in your business, I will tell you that is probably, other than engaging two-factor everywhere, you hear that a lot probably from us, from your IT department. awareness training is probably one of the number one things you can do. Train your people to see these things ahead of time so your company doesn't become the next victim. They're not doing anything mischievous. It's an accident. It's lack of education. So our job as owners is to educate and to help people understand that they have to take these things serious. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is Unified. Unify is a company that makes network switches. Those of you in the IT industry know who they are for the most part. You've probably seen Unify switches everywhere. So very similar. Unify targeted emails. Attackers use spoof emails using that resembled Unify executives. So this is another example of they have maybe the domain spelled just a little different. And they add 2 I's. And because it's the email they see every day from john@unify.com, they don't notice that there's a letter that's changed. And they believe it. And they fall for the attack. Executives, so this was an email where they were requesting executives transfer funds immediately. They impersonated executives using convincing information to get employees to authorize transfers. I think what's super crazy about this is they did multiple transactions through different people. It wasn't just one team. It was multiple authorizations. They actually planned it out. They understood the internal communication and the process to make the attacks more believable. So from some of what I did when I studied this case study, a lot of people believe that they actually had a business email compromise well before and had actually been studying the business. And were learning the internal communication through vendors or some other way. They believe that they either had insider information or something that gave them enough information to really make this sound very believable. And again, the impact is huge. We're talking about them losing $46 million that they transferred off to attackers. I think the other thing that is not on my slides but was fascinating was there was no system breach from what they can see. Like I said just a minute ago, they think that somebody else who did business with the Unify might have had something go on, but when they did an actual internal investigation, no one hacked into their system. They were using spoofed emails, so they weren't actually in their email, they just used an email. So it was a cyber attack, but it was mainly social engineering. All social engineering to actually trick these people. I guess I did put it in there. No system breach. So the attack relied completely on social engineering. So somehow they got enough information to do it right. They still don't really know. They can't. All the studying I looked into, I couldn't figure out where they got the information. They still don't know. But when they did the actual investigation, they didn't find anything internal was hacked. Again, verification. We're going to see a theme. Verification is huge. Verification is what really, and especially in the finance department, is what keeps people safe. And awareness training. Okay, we're going to talk about business email compromises next. Business email compromises, remember that $1 billion information, or that $1 billion one that I gave you, that we talked about at the very beginning, that statistic from the FBI. So business email compromises are a scam that's targeting companies that conduct wire transfers or handle sensitive information via email. If you're on Office 365 or Google Workspace, you might be using OneDrive. It's common practice. Most of our clients are. Well, pretty much all of them are. And we trust it to hold documents, to hold financial information. But the question is, what happens when a hacker actually socially engineers and manipulates employees to get into their email and start digging around? Now, I told a story at the very beginning about 2 different businesses, if you remember. Both of them had business email compromises. One of them, we stopped in 6 minutes. The other guy lost a lot of information, and we're still figuring out how much was actually lost. They email spoof, impersonate executives or vendors, but here's the big difference with the business email compromise. They're in your system. Generally, this happens with a phishing email that looks like a Microsoft password reset, or an email that says your email was compromised. Well, not yet, because you didn't let them in, but they're lying about it, and they say to reset your password, go to this area, and then you basically give them your credentials. They create websites that look exactly like the Microsoft logons. They trick people into giving away their two-factor. It's super, super sophisticated, the things that these people can do. And once they're in, they do two things. One, they start researching and figuring out, well, what does this company have? What do they have in their drives? What kind of emails are they getting back and forth? In some cases, they will sit in there for up to 120 or more days before they do anything. Just watching. Waiting to see if something of value comes into your email. Or they spend their time just looking around for stuff that's of value before they actually act on it. This is why monitoring of emails and users logging in and out and having something that's actually looking at that is super important, because what we find is the average hacker is in a system over 120 days before they actually do something. It's this insane statistic to think if you haven't been monitoring your email, it'd be worth it to go look at the area and go see if there's anyone logged in from other countries recently. Make sure you've got alerts turned on to tell you if some of that stuff happens. Because this is a real thing, and we see it. It's $1 billion with a B cost to businesses. And they're actually hijacking legitimate accounts. So remember I talked earlier, with Unify, they had a similar account. It looked a little bit like Unify. In this case, they literally took over your email. If you're an admin, they took over an admin account. They've got access to more than you want them to, and they can lock you out. And now you've got to go back to Microsoft and get that solved and go through a big rigmarole. Super important that we look at how it goes back to training. So we're going to talk about business email compromises. The goal and impact, BEC, or business email compromises, their goal is to deceive employees or vendors into transferring funds or sharing sensitive data, causing major reputational damage and financial. Now, here's the big thing. If they're in your email in some cases, they might already have that depending on where you store it. Now, I'm not making a case to not store things in OneDrive. I'm making a case to protect your Microsoft environment or your Google Workspace environment. I think we should still be, using those tools for what they're meant for, but we have to take a serious look at our own environments to make sure that they're secure. Because this is the biggest moneymaker right now, according to the FBI. So this happened to an organization called Treasure Island Homeless Charity. So December of 2020, these hackers used a compromised third-party bookkeeper's account. So their vendor got hacked. And their vendor transferred $625,000 from this homeless charity in San Francisco to their own account through a business email compromise. And you might ask how they do that. Well, if they have access to email, they have access to go to banking and figure out where your banking statements come from. They have access to reset passwords. They have access to do a bunch of things because they have access to your email. And once they have that, they can generally get anywhere depending on the type of security that you have put in place. So that's what happened here. Third-party bookkeeper was probably responsible for transferring funds to pay bills and do things for them. They got hacked. And now all of a sudden, they lost $625,000, which you'll see of the case studies that we picked. This is the smallest amount, but it's significant to them, right? Because we're talking about, a small homeless charity that can't afford to lose that much money. I would say this is more realistic for a lot of us than some of the other guys. If we lost $625,000 of our budget or had to pay that out to get back online, or we lost it in general, it would be highly destructive to our business. This is probably closer to hitting home when it comes to money than any of the other case studies we're looking at. So again, third-party entry point. They infiltrated the email of a third-party bookkeeper connected to the charity. So it was somebody that they hired, obviously trusted. I'm sure she wasn't intentional, but she didn't have cybersecurity. So there's some good questions to ask here. If you've got vendors working for you, how are they protecting themselves? I had this discussion with our own CPA, right? I'm a cybersecurity company. So I vet my vendors as well, and I ask those questions. Hey, what are you doing? Because if you're not doing anything, then we have to start having conversations about where our company goes. So real conversations you can have. Invoice manipulation, so they altered legitimate invoices with the fraudulent bank details. Again, they had access to her email, so they could see what the invoices looked like. They just had to duplicate them and change information. So they literally set this up so staff unknowingly processed the payments without realizing it because they looked identical. Hackers posed the executive director, Sherry Williams, to justify the payments. So they were able to then send an email back pretending to be the CEO or the executive director in this case and say, yep, those payments are fine. So here's the impact, financial loss. Again, for a smaller business like most of ours, like I'm a small business, $625,000 would be a huge hit for us. I'm not sure we'd be around. I mean, just it's a real thing. Like when you're a small business, that's a lot of money. That's why we have insurance, cybersecurity insurance and other things to help us with that. But they had no recovery because they didn't have cybersecurity insurance. So they had to eat it themselves. They couldn't get law enforcement support because it was an international crime. So the local police couldn't really do anything to help them. FBI has some, like they've been in the last couple of years, they've taken down some major gangs with the help of other organizations. But that's one of the problems we face. Most of these attacks are not local guys in your own city. These are people from other countries, and it's hard to get help from law enforcement to actually solve the problem. So we have to be protecting our stuff so we can try to keep it from happening. Cyber insurance is crucial, guys. So if you don't have coverage, and I'm not talking about, I'm going to preface this because I have to legally, I'm not an insurance agent. But it would be worth it to sit down with your insurance agent and have the conversation about coverages. Because I will tell you, from looking and working with other partners and customers of ours, most of the add-on cybersecurity blurps are either one, they're taking them out because of just having to pay out on them. They're generally not enough to take care of a cybersecurity incident. So you need to have a standalone policy for your business and organization. So they didn't have multi-factor in place, which is what led the person's email to get compromised. So I know it's annoying, but it's one of those things. I hear it a lot when we first take on a client, they don't use it. Oh, it's really annoying. It's not as annoying as getting hacked. That's just the facts. It's not as, it's 2 seconds to go look at your phone. That's way better than having somebody steal money from your business. And they didn't have verification. I guess can't go back, but they were lacking verification of the process, which we've talked about a couple times. Okay, next we're going to move on to ransomware because I got to go quicker now. Really, you look at the clock and you're like, oh man, I don't have as much time as I thought. Hey, so type of malware that locks encryption data on a computer system. Hackers demand a ransom to unlock the data. We've seen this recently. I was watching somebody this morning who had a similar one. But here's another one. This is CWT. So they have cyberware attack. Ranger Locker accessed their network via remote desktop, encrypting data, stealing 2 terabytes worth of data, including financial reports and customer data with threats to release it. So they didn't say, not only did we lock everything down so your system's not usable, we stole it and we're going to give it away on the dark web. And we're going to damage not just your reputation, but we're going to damage the credit of your clients. They negotiated down and they paid $4.5 million to recover their encrypted files and hope that it wasn't released. Who trusts cyber criminals to do what they say they're going to do? Right? We don't know. Like, you pay the ransom, they may or may not unlock your system. We've seen that before. You pay the money and they don't do anything. Go, thanks for the money, and they leave. Impact. Service disruption. So they were down for, I think it was over 2 weeks. Data risk. Stolen info possesses a threat to claims that customer data were not affected. So they wanted to make sure that, they were trying to make sure customer data wasn't affected. So they tried to pay the money, but that the people have the data. There's not much you can do if they just release it anyways or sell it to make more money off of it. Stronger security. Limit your remote access to your infrastructure. If you're using VPN and RDP to access computers, there is a better way, and you should be considering other options. A properly monitored OneDrive, and for example, is actually better than VPN. Because if you offer VPN access, depending on how you have it set up, you can open yourself up. If someone gets attacked at home, it can go to your home office. That's a scary thing. Crisis handling, transparency, and cooperations with authorities are crucial. So they worked hand in hand with local authorities and the FBI to get this worked on. That's why it's important that you report these things to the FBI. I don't have as much time to cover that because I'm running out of time. And then what's the risk if you do pay and they don't give the money back? Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next segment. How do we protect our businesses from being the next victim? So we're going to start with a cybersecurity risk assessment. Has anybody in here done a risk assessment on your business in the last year? Okay, great. I saw some hands. That's awesome. Thank you. I think that's amazing. Cybersecurity risk assessments help you do a couple of things. They help you know what the data you have, know the requirement for your city, state, and country, so it's different. Is there anybody out of the U.S. who's here? Anybody come from outside the U.S.? A couple of you? Okay, fantastic. So you want to know, like, American regulations are different from Canadian regulations, or different from Australian regulations. If you pay attention to that stuff, I'm in a group where we've got some Australians in there. Their regulations are changing rapidly. Some are getting better, they're catching up with the US, and other places we're all behind. But you want to know your regulations for your industry, and it's quickly changing because of insurance. You can use the NIST standards as a guide, and also consult with your insurance company who does your cybersecurity policy on what the requirements are. A couple of things you want to make sure. Are you doing all the things so that your insurance company covers you if you have a cyber attack? Because we are seeing cases where people say they have everything on their checkbox, when they fill out their cybersecurity insurance forms at the beginning of the year to get the renewal, and they don't, and they have a cyber attack, and the insurance company does their own investigation, finds out they don't have everything, and guess what? They don't get any money. So it's really important that you follow the forms, you talk with your insurance agent, make sure that you are doing all the things that they're recommending as well. But here, we can start with the basics. I've talked about it. Cybersecurity, training, testing. We use a tool that uses gamification. So gamification means that as your employees take more tests, they don't get hacked, or not hacked, but they don't fall for phishing attacks that your IT department sends, their score goes up. If they fall for a phishing attack, their score goes down. As they complete trainings, like we send out weekly trainings to our people, to all of our customers, their score goes up. And you as the employer can reward them. Gift cards, Hawaii, I'm joking. You can do things to encourage your people to, create a culture of cybersecurity awareness that's not just a checkbox that you check. Cybersecurity training has to be a cultural thing, a cultural shift in your business. Cybersecurity awareness has to be something that you say, guys, we're in this together, because when we don't get hacked, you guys have jobs. It's a serious thing. It's a reality, what we're seeing today. Businesses closing down. Gamification is a great way to keep it positive. Advanced antivirus endpoint detection or EDR, password managers. I totally will tell you, do not save passwords in browsers. They're not secure. I run the regular cybersecurity scans, and I find passwords in the wild all the time that are unencrypted. And if I can get to them with a simple scan, so can criminals. SaaS monitoring, so this is where we talk about monitor your Office 365 of malicious activity to prevent business email compromises. Enable two-factor everywhere. Every account, every user should have two-factor included and set up and enforced. So there's a difference between active from an administrative standpoint and enforced, which means you as the admin says you don't have any choice but to use this. You should establish, plans and policies. Can it go back? Look at that, I found the button. You can establish policies for communication, tool usage, and responding to cyber attacks. So one of the local colleges here 2 years ago had a cyber attack. Something that never happens in a cyber attack. The chief information security officer got promoted after it happened. You ask yourself why. I sat in a thing that he was on a panel a couple years ago where he talked about what happened. He had everything planned out so well that every department knew what to do. So he just had to say, hey, we're in emergency mode. This is what happened. Every department had been trained. They had done tabletop exercises. They had done all the things. And he was able to minimize attacks. I can't tell you that cybersecurity companies can prevent attacks, but we can make them not suck so much. We can make you lose less money if you lose any at all. We can lower the possibility of it happening. Okay, so I'm running out of time. So there's really two options when it comes to finding partners. So you can go in-house IT, and you can decide if you have the right amount of people. So 75 to 100 employees. You would want to make sure you have all these tools that we talked about in your third party. You would look for vendors on your own that can do that. And you can actually find vendors that work direct with companies. That's one option. The other option is you can go fully outsource. That's a company like mine. That's where we actually will actually take care of your IT for you, cybersecurity, everything. You don't have to have an IT department. If you have less than 5 staff, that's when you can start thinking you have to kind of get a little bit more creative about how you do things yourself. The other option that's not on here when you talk about, say you already have an IT department and you're bigger, you can also do partially managed IT where somebody like us does the actual half of the work. Like we do just the cybersecurity side. We give you tools there's a lot of industry specific tools that we have access to that you guys maybe can't get to. There's a lot of them that are channel only that we can get to. And so that's where you can talk with a company like ours. So I am actually out of time, and the good news is I had the last slide. Yeah, thank you. So here's a couple things as I part. We've got some free resources for you. So if you guys want to scan that QR code, you can go and you can actually grab one of our literature things that's 15 ways to prevent a cybersecurity attack. We've got some free giveaway information that you guys can download, no cost to you at all, that you can go and grab that. And then the other QR code right next to it is literally just a way to contact me. So it takes you right to my direct, gives you my email, my phone number, not my house address, but everything else to get a hold of me is there. Do I have time for questions? They haven't answered, so I'm going to say, does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
To get your employees to get on with a password manager.
Yeah.
When they've had passwords in all these different places.
Right.
What do I do?
So I'm a big fan. We personally use Keeper. It's available to the public as well as channel direct to companies to resell. Keeper's a fantastic one. Even though LastPass had a cybersecurity incident a couple years ago, they're a good one. Again, it goes back to training and culture. And again, one of the things we talk about frequently is we're never trying to beat people up when we talk about cybersecurity. We're really talking about, guys, we're in this together. These are the tools we're going to equip you with to do this the right way. And then I would recommend that you set it up for them and walk them through it. Password managers do take a little bit of setup to get going, and I think it's very valuable. Make sure you help them or get somebody to help them walk them through how it works so they actually use it. The other thing you can do immediately is transfer all the passwords from your browser into it. It's usually built into the setup process. That way they can start using it, and you turn off the browser from saving and using passwords as well. Any other questions? Either I did a really great job or... Okay, well, I'll be in the back for a little bit if anybody has any questions or wants to talk. Thanks very much. Hey, thanks, man.
Okay, so I think we're going to break for lunch now.